Welcome to this video, and all the way from sunny Sydney, Australia, I'd like to welcome Ros Nealon-Cook, who unfortunately is a former registered psychologist, but we may welcome on to that. Ros, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, John. The pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. So you've started you have found a member of an organisation called the Cape Byron Lighthouse Declaration. And I think the evidence there really is on the lighthouse, isn't it? And the what the lighthouse represents.
Yes.
But how did all this start? I mean, presumably a few years ago, you were a happy psychologist specialising in children and families. Did something go wrong?
Something did go wrong, John, and that was, like so many of your listeners and yourself, was the COVID lockdowns and the government response to the COVID lockdowns. Psychology is my second career, so even though I'm well into middle age, I have only, been in this profession for 15 years. What was concerning me the most about what I was seeing was the damaging effects of the lockdowns, the potentially damaging effects of the lockdowns on the children and the families. I'm not actually in Sydney. I'm in an area west of Sydney called the Blue Mountains. And the reason I'm raising that is that I don't know if you even heard of it, but about 6 months before the lockdowns, we had one of the worst bushfire seasons in Australia that we'd ever seen. Did you hear about that? And where I live, we're in a tourist community. So we had already, the local population had suffered dramatically in terms of loss of income. There were no tourists coming because of the fires. And when we see that in a population that's primarily based on tourism, we see, of course, I don't know if it's natural, but the increases in drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, all sorts of abuse throughout the lifespan. And when COVID came along and they were talking about blocking the cruise ships, etc., which bring in a huge amount of the tourism here, I was especially worried because we'd already lost a whole summer season of tourism. And when they were talking about stopping the cruise boats and locking us down for a long time, I was very, very worried because ultimately the children that I work are downstream of the impacts on the parents. And when parents lose their income, when parents also are locked at home, of course, you get, like I said, the increases in domestic violence, in drug and alcohol abuse, and that flows down to the children who end up being highly traumatized. So I was very, very concerned. However, as a relatively new psychologist, I didn't think it was my place to speak out. I assumed people sort of higher up the chain, as it were, would speak out because it was very obvious to me early on that the psychological impacts of this were going to be devastating, not just a little bit, devastating for generations. So that's how I came into this, yes.
And what did you do with these concerns initially? How did you express them, and were you able to communicate with your leaders? And
I tried to. Initially, like I said, I sort of waited. I think a lot of us did. Then I would speak to other people, whether it was friends, family members, other professionals. And I remember this sort of growing disquiet as I would see almost these highly intelligent people with these sort of numbed out faces. They just were not taking it in. But again, I kept thinking, well, who am I I must be wrong. I must somehow be wrong, because surely the powers that be, who are far, as I felt, more superior to me, they will come in and fix things. And when was it? So the first lockdowns of 2020, my sense, I actually thought, and I hate to say this, but I actually thought that it was going to be the northern winter of 2020-21 that was going to see so much psychological collateral damage. I mean, can you imagine being a single mum in a Glaswegian housing estate with 5 kids, having to homeschool them, etc. So I thought there was going to be it would become obvious that this was far worse in terms of the psychological impacts and people would do something. It didn't happen. So I tried to speak out. In the end, I don't know if you remember, but we went into this 4-month lockdown. We had incredible lockdowns here. We went into a 4-month lockdown in July 2020. And it was very obvious because that was sort of, if you remember, back in that Delta time, we knew because of what they were saying in the media, that it was going to be months, it wasn't going to be weeks, this one. And so that was the point that I wrote to the psychology boards, I wrote to the various different professional associations, and I said, very, politely, what are we doing here? We know the collateral damage is going to be enormous. What can we do? And I was told very frankly that yes, we understand, and other psychologists have written in as you have, but you must understand that if you do speak out, you will face disciplinary action because of the Australian government gag orders. And I remember, I see your response to that, John. I remember having such a visceral response to that because I thought, that's the way they talk in North Korea or China. And I mean, that might sound naive now, but I couldn't believe it. I would face disciplinary action because I'm terrified about what's going to happen to the children of the country and the planet at large.